Good morning, everyone. Today is February 17th, 2020, and here is today's Monday Morning Minute. For today, we will take a look at this week's readings, Chapter 6 from the Jones & Jones textbook, which have to do with getting organized. And coming up this week, we have our fourth critical response. So we've wrapped up our unit talking about relationships, both relationships between students and teachers, and relationships among students, and of course relationships between teachers and administrators and family members, community members, etc. And so now we're looking at kind of the nuts and bolts of specific classroom management strategies, which are predicated upon having these really strong relationships with all educational stakeholders, as we've discussed at length now for the first 5 or so weeks of the semester. So I just want to say that because it is important to remember that all of these strategies that we will discuss are built upon that foundational relationship that you have with your students. So this week we're looking at Jones & Jones Chapter 6, which has to do with creating a positive learning environment. So we're looking at classroom rules, procedures, and organization. So a couple ideas that I want us to think about as you read through this chapter, which has just tons and tons of strategies that I hope will be interested to try. First of all, there's a quote that opens the chapter from Forrest Gathercole, who writes, "Until students are allowed to have and begin to feel a proprietary interest in school and classroom rules, classroom control and a good learning environment will always be at risk." So something for us to consider is the extent to which our own students have a say in developing the rules that they themselves will be held to throughout the school year. Also, towards the end of the chapter, we hear about some research from Kunin. This is really foundational research within classroom management, who found that among classrooms in which there was thought to be good classroom management and poor classroom management, the difference wasn't in how teachers dealt with big management issues. They dealt pretty much the same with those sorts of issues. Instead, what Kunin found was that the successful teachers actually prevented those big classroom management issues from happening, and thereby maximized learning for all students. So again, something kind of interesting to think about. It's not in how we deal with the flagrant issues, right? It's much more about how we stem them from even happening in the first place. And then a final thought for us to think about. Again, this kind of echoes back to the Gathercole quote, but our authors write, "Students can be expected to support rules and procedures that enhance learning only if the learning process itself is respectful of students and their needs." As you read this chapter, I think our authors do a really nice, if maybe too subtle, job of talking about the importance of being culturally responsive when we're thinking about coming up with rules and enforcing rules and procedures in our classrooms. So again, just sort of remembering that when we're talking about classroom management, when we're talking about these topics, we really have to sort of view this communication as a two-way street between ourselves as teachers and the students that we are working with. So I'm interested to hear what you all have to say about the ideas and the strategies presented in this chapter. So for this week, we have our fourth critical response. Your initial post will be due on Thursday, the 20th. Your follow-up post will be due this on Sunday, February 23rd. And of course, you're always welcome just to reflect on any meaningful part of the chapter that you found intriguing. But if you're interested, here's your optional prompt. I've basically taken Activity 6.4, which is represented at the end of the chapter. I've reworked it a bit for our purposes, but on page 199, it's figure 6.15, our authors list 11 sort of critical instructional management skills. So taking a look at those 11 skills, I'm curious about which of those skills are you most interested in improving given your context. And additionally, based on the information presented in Chapter 6, what modifications might you make with respect to those skills to your practice? Are there strategies that you're interested in implementing? And it would be fantastic too if you actually implement some of these strategies and then you can tell us how it went. So again, that's just your optional prompt. I look forward to hearing what you all have to say this week, and I hope that you have a wonderful week.